Let not your heart be troubled. You are listening to the Sean Hannity Radio Show podcast. If you're like me and suffer from insomnia, you know what? That's not fun. I tried everything. I couldn't get a good night's sleep. And this is neither drug nor alcohol induced. That's right. It is MyPillow. Mike Lindell invented it, and he fitted me for my first MyPillow, and it's changed my life. I fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and the good news, you can too. Just go to MyPillow.com, promo code Sean, and take advantage of one of Mike Lindell's best offers, his special 4-pack. You get 50% off 2 MyPillow premium pillows, 2 Go Anywhere pillows. Now, MyPillow's made in the USA, has a 60-day unconditional money-back guarantee, no risk to you, and a 10-year warranty. You don't want to spend more sleepless nights on a pillow tossing and turning that's not working for you. Just go to MyPillow.com right now, use the promo code Sean, and you get Mike Lindell's special 4-pack. You get 2 MyPillow premium pillows, 2 Go Anywhere pillows, 50% off, and you'll start getting the kind of peaceful and restful and comfortable and deep healing and recuperative sleep you've been craving and deserve. MyPillow.com, promo code Sean. All right, glad you're with us from our nation's capital, Sin City, the swamp, the sewer. It's the Sean Hannity Show. Write down our toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of the program. It's 800-941-SEAN. If you want to join us, we'd love to have you be a part of the program. So much news going on today. As I predicted in the course of yesterday's program, the president did, the House Intel Committee did, in fact, vote out to release the memo to the public. I told you about the entire process. And in that process, that now goes to the White House, which has 5 days to make a determination as to whether or not it will be released to we, the people. I suspect very strongly that the White House, they have signaled that they want to be transparent as much as they possibly can. But I don't think you're going to see that memo today and probably not tomorrow, because why would you release it? That would totally step on the president's first State of the Union address. And there are a lot of issues that need to be discussed. And I think the American people do best when they hear directly from the president himself rather than a bunch of media, leftists that hate his guts and have spent an entire year lying to the American public about him and have tried to undermine and destroy his presidency the entire time. And so he gets to go direct to you, the people. He is not using Twitter, although maybe they'll be tweeting out some of the better comments that he makes. You never know. Look, tonight's going to be State of the Union addresses are pretty phenomenal. I've been to one, Barack Obama's last. I went to the president's joint address to Congress, thanks to Congressman Louis Gohmert. He's always offered me generously a seat. And I finally, after many years, I said, you know what, I'd really like to do this. I'd really like to go. And I went to Obama's last one. And it wasn't the fact that it was Obama. I mean, it was just the fact that I got to see history, and very few people get to sit in the gallery. I think every congressman has one extra seat, and you sit in the balcony. And the hard part is you have to get there an hour and a half early, and you have to be wanded and patted down. And in my case, when Obama was president, basically strip searched, and then they let you in the building. But, to be in a room with the president is a great honor. We're going to hear a lot tonight about the economic growth that is now unfolding before our eyes. I won't go through all the statistics now. The president will go through all of that in great detail tonight. I know the president is talking at length, and Gary Cohn signaled on CNBC earlier today that infrastructure is the next leg of the stool in what they believe is their economic agenda, and is going to talk about $1.5 trillion of investment. But what's interesting about it, they'll be talking about streamlining the approval process as it relates to infrastructure. And based on my many interviews with the president, I'm sure he's going to be talking about private-public partnerships in infrastructure. And to me, that has always made sense. Why is the biggest landholder in America the United States government? There are certain things that we can allow the general public to bid on and make money on, and that they have certain responsibilities in terms of the way they maintain roads or bridges or what tunnels or whatever it happens to be. Let's say that some company wanted to build another tunnel into New York City, and that could be a public-private partnership, and one that would be beneficial for the people in New York City. It takes 400,000 hours. Immigration is going to be big tonight. I suspect that the president will talk a lot about funding completely the border wall. I think it's clear he wants to get rid of chain migration. He wants to get rid of the visa lottery system. And I suspect that he's throwing DACA on the table for the Democrats. In my opinion, the Democrats don't want that deal. The Democrats want DACA not touched because they want to be able to go out there and portray this president as cold-hearted. And I suspect that might even end up backfiring on them if the president's saying all I want to do is keep a campaign promise and secure the border and end chain migration and get rid of a visa lottery based on recent incidents in which people that were chain migrants and visa lottery winners were involved in issues that hurt the American people. I think the president will make a pretty compelling case. I know that there's a mother I saw on one of the Fox shows earlier today, I don't remember which one, whose daughter was literally hacked to death by the gang MS-13. I actually think this woman is from Long Island. I mean, you hear about the Crips and the Bloods and MS-13, and you think Los Angeles, and no, this is all over the country now, and in small towns and big cities alike. So that'll come up, and I'm sure national security and defense is going to come up, and so much more. And that's what State of the Union speeches are supposed to be about. I doubt the president. I mean, this is a guess. I did speak to somebody at the White House, and I didn't ask the question, but I don't suspect that the president's going to be talking about the memo. I do believe the president will try and at least strike a tone of, being somewhat conciliatory, but I don't think the Democrats ever have any interest in that. But the really big news is what happened. We were talking about some of it on the air yesterday, and that is the disgraced Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe is out at the Bureau. He was removed from his post. He didn't leave voluntarily, according to all our sources. Sarah Carter is reporting that. She'll join us later in the program with Greg Jarrett today. And also that McCabe's exit is probably just the beginning of many more resignations to come. Now, again, I want to be very specific and clear that we're not talking about rank and file FBI and DOJ people or intelligence people. We're talking about the upper echelon. We're talking about an elite group of people, the people that protect us every day and properly use the weapons of intelligence that we entrust to them. We're not talking about them. We're very appreciative of what they do. We're very appreciative of the rank and file FBI agents that go out and fight the fights that we can't fight ourselves against a lot of people perpetrating a lot of evil in society. And that's the same with all law enforcement. This phony narrative by the left, conservative conspiracy theorists, hey, they're trashing an institution, the FBI. We're not doing anything of the sort. What we're doing is we're basically talking about those people in the highest levels of power that have abused it. But the biggest issue remains now that since we got off the air yesterday, the House Intelligence Committee voted to release that classified memo. That shows what we now believe, based on our sources, to be massive and severe abuse of FISA warrants. And you got to understand what a FISA warrant is. That is, FISA was designed post 9/11 so that if need be, we can spy on Americans. In other words, it's a mechanism by which, if you have enough information and suspicions about an individual, you plea your case in secret before a FISA court. Now, for Hillary Clinton to have a bought and paid for dossier full of phony, salacious, Russian-sourced lies, A, to manipulate the general election, and then B, used as the foundation to get a warrant to spy on an opposition candidate in an election year, and then spy on an incoming president-elect. That's not what FISA was designed for. And as one high-ranking member of the House told me yesterday, if we don't fix these abuses, you can take the Constitution and put it through a shredder, because Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure, it just evaporated, and that there's going to be massive wholesale changes to protect against this type of thing ever happening again. You know, on top of all of this, then we've got this big information crisis in the country. You have a media that for an entire year, and I played this yesterday, I won't bother playing it again today, that has gone out and told you day in and day out, breathlessly, hysterically, literally, panting, whatever little shred of what they thought was evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. To this day, there's no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. Not a shred of it. I went through this last night, and I went through it in great detail. All the issues we have been talking about, we actually have real evidence before that we're presenting every day. And we give you that evidence, and it grows every day. And it started about a year ago when John Solomon and Sarah Carter, and they said, hey, it looks like Trump Tower was surveilled, and they had gotten a FISA warrant. And at the time, then Donald Trump, at some point down the road, following the news, says, it looks like Obama spied on Trump Tower. And the media mocked and ridiculed and laughed and made fun of, just like they mocked and ridiculed and made fun of the idea that Donald Trump was actually going to run for president. Not only did he run, he beat 16 senior political figures in the country, and then he goes on to beat the Clinton cartel. They didn't expect that either, but they did have their insurance policy, as we now know from Peter Strzok and his mistress, Lisa Page. We know in that case. You look at everything involved with Andrew McCabe, everything about Andrew McCabe. Here's a guy that, was involved in every single instance of corruption and abuse, and especially abuse of power of the FBI that was exposed. You have the top ranks of the FBI. This needs to be cleaned out. And the people that I'm hearing from the most that want it cleaned out are FBI guys that I know. This is not how they roll, the 99% of them. Now, when you finally vote to release this, why did all the Democrats vote that you cannot see this? Because they don't want you to see it. And they don't want you to see it because it's going to be transparent and obvious how abusive they've made this whole process. Anyway, so we got so much to get to in the course of the program today. We're in Washington. The media is obsessed with one thing. For 1 year, they're wrong every day. And here's the biggest story of their life and career, and they just ignore it. I'll give you some examples to help you understand. Hillary broke the law. Hillary had a server in a mom-and-pop shop bathroom closet. Hillary had on that classified top secret special access program information. Mishandling classified information is a felony. If you destroy classified information, it's a felony. She took 33,000 emails that were subpoenaed and deleted them. Then to make sure they were gone, she acid washed and bleach bit them. And then to make doubly sure, in case they went to her BlackBerry, she smashed those with hammers. Well, those are laws. I gave you the codes yesterday on the program. I won't go over that today. She broke the law. Those are facts. There's no facts in Trump Russia. We have facts with Peter Strzok, and we have facts that James Comey and Strzok were writing an exoneration before an investigation. They changed the legal standard from gross negligence to extreme carelessness. They took out that foreign agencies had literally hacked into Hillary Clinton's emails and got top secret information. We know that Hillary Clinton paid for the phony dossier. We know that she rigged the primary against Bernie, according to Donna Brazil. We know that she tried to rig the general with the phony Russian propaganda that she paid for to lie to the American people. Then it's the foundation for a FISA warrant against an opposition party in an election year. We have evidence in every one of these charges we're making. Your fake news media has nothing. They have nothing. Ask any Democrat, what evidence do you have of Trump-Russia collusion? And see what their answer is going to be. There's no answer. It's like I'll play some tape later in the program. You have Campus for Change. They went out and Campus for Reform. Okay. They went out and interviewed a bunch of students. What did you think of the President's State of the Union address? They hate the president. It was a horrible speech. The speech hasn't happened yet. Unbelievable. They're your future leaders, your future congressmen and senators. All right, as we roll along, Sean Hannity Show, 800-941-SEAN. Want to be a part of the program? Here's A couple of things. Now, if you look at the involvement of James Comey and Peter Strzok, and then Peter Strzok with Lisa Page, and then the involvement of Andrew McCabe in that, and then the involvement of Loretta Lynch and all that, there's some interesting things. You look at just the few text messages we've got. There's over 50,000 of them. You know, I want to believe the path that you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. Wow. Now we know. We didn't know then. Now we know what that means. And most of us are surmising Andy to be Andrew McCabe, who got fired yesterday. And it was McCabe who also oversaw Strzok's work on the counterintelligence investigation into, quote, Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. And it was Lisa Page, his mistress, that was advising McCabe on legal matters. And Strzok and Page were later removed by special counsel Mueller because he got a heads up that these text messages existed. Now the question is, Catherine Herridge at Fox reported McCabe is believed to have been a central point of contact for the handling of Fusion GPS and the dossier compiled by the former MI6 intelligence guy, Christopher Steele. And McCabe was set to meet with the House Intelligence Committee just before Christmas about the FBI's involvement with the dossier, but he had scheduling issues. When we come back, I'm going to give you more on that timeline and much more. We're in our nation's capital. 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program. Steve Scalise is going to be with us. Hannity.com, the Deplorables Party, if you want to watch online tonight, the State of the Union address. All right, 25 till the top of the hour. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. We're in our nation's capital. The president's first State of the Union address tonight, well, about 5 hours and 25 minutes and 14 seconds away. Not that I'm being specific or anything. But we expect it's going to be, you know, he's got a story to tell about economic growth. He's got a story to tell. You know, the lowest unemployment numbers for, when you look at it demographically, for black Americans, Hispanic Americans in history. A 17-year low unemployment level for women. 2 million fewer Americans on food stamps. 2.2 million jobs created. You know, 20 regulations gone for every new one that they took on. ANWR is finally, for the first time, President Reagan wanted to open ANWR for drilling. Now it's going to be open for drilling. You know, the coal industry's been saved. You've got pipelines that are about to be built. You've got jobs that are going to be created, especially in the energy sector, where we have the benefit that we're not going to count on other countries that hate our guts for the lifeblood of our economy, the engine of our economy. And then we'll create millions of high-paying career jobs for Americans that need them. That's all going to be, you know, something that we all want and need. You know, you think about that. I mean, this is a dramatic consumer confidence, stock market records. ISIS has been defeated. Got rid of the employer mandate in the tax bill. The tax bill hasn't even taken effect yet. That's February 1st. People are going to see a lot more money in their pockets. This is real change. And he did it, you know, with under the most difficult conditions. No, not to be rude to some weak Republicans, but some Republicans never meant it when they said they wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare. So we had to thread the needle there. They got a bill passed to their credit. I'm less critical of the House. They passed over 300 bills that the Senate never passed, including Kate Steinle's bill and law and other things, Kate's law. So, you know, I wish the Senate would move a little faster. I'd like to see them this year fund the wall completely and get a couple of hundred new miles built so people can say, yeah, we did it this time. Because they promised it in 86. They promised it under George W. Bush in 2006, and they promised it in 2013. Nothing. You always get the tax increase. I'm sorry, the spending increase. You never get the tax cut. You always get the amnesty, the consideration. You never get the wall, the security that they promise. Anyway, joining us now is Steve Scalise. He's the House Majority Whip. I heard you had to go back in the hospital and that you came out with, you know, doing really well. And this hopefully is your last surgery, I heard. How you doing?
Hey, Sean, I'm doing real good. I had a surgery 2 weeks ago. I had to kind of repair a lot of the damage that was done internally that needed to heal first. So, you know, we've been about 7 months past the shooting, and that went very successfully. They said I've got one final surgery to go in 2.5 months. That'll hopefully be the very last one tied to all of this. So it's putting everything back together again, and still got rehab to go, but it's going well. And boy, the prayers have been unbelievable, and I appreciate every one of them.
Well, that certainly makes you stop in your tracks in life when you get shot and you're not expecting it. Just playing a little softball with your buddies, right?
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. You're not expecting it at all. You're playing baseball with with a bunch of friends, and next thing you know you're in a hospital fighting for your life. And that went on for about a month, and then another 2.5 months relearning how to walk again, and finally got back out and got to get back to work. And that's been great, just to be able to go home on weekends again with my family, and to to be here working with President Trump, and just phenomenal things that he's doing to get this economy moving again. Vice President Pence, just golly, has been such a great friend going back to when we served in the House together, but I think he's been such a great, strong ally to President Trump, to have such a 1-2 punch, and getting some really big things done that you just touted. I mean, you really hit on so many things that President Trump can talk about tonight. And look, these tax cuts, the doom and gloom that, Pelosi was saying just yesterday, that her worst nightmare, the thing that keeps her up at night, are the dark clouds cast by these tax cuts, giving people their money back. And yet Exxon yesterday, Sean, $50 billion of new investment in America. I mean, Starbucks and Disney and Home Depot and FedEx just last week are giving pay raises to their employees, and Democrats are upset about that. So I think it shows you the contrast between our two parties.
I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, and I doubt you did either. But no. I got to tell you, I remember, those years that I really struggled. I mean, it was month to month for me, and I'm a young adult, and I'm trying to pay my rent and trying to make my way, and I couldn't afford to even buy cheeseburgers, for crying out loud. I was always making my own. And anyway, and then Nancy Pelosi comes along and says $1,000 or $2,000 that these companies are giving as bonuses to their employees, and there's so many of them, and that they're getting pay raises, and then they're getting the tax cuts beginning February 1st. And she, I know she used to use a government G5 to fly back and forth to San Francisco, which cost us like $80,000 round trip. But for the average person, that's a lot of money. Those aren't crumbs, as she suggested.
Right. She called it crumbs. And look, Sean, I mean, Home Depot was one of those companies last week that gave pay raises and bonuses to their employees. I worked my way through LSU when I was a student at Home Depot. That $1,000 would have meant a lot to me as a student struggling to get by, but ultimately was able to because of the value of that work. And to those families that are working at Home Depot right now, or any of those companies that you're seeing, $1,000 is a big deal to them. I mean, the AT&T was the first company. The day we're on the White House lawn, where President Trump is getting ready to celebrate the fact that the House and the Senate both came together to put that bill on his desk for him to sign. And AT&T said we're going to give $1,000 bonuses to 200,000 workers. And the guy that's laying fiber optic cable for AT&T making $50,000 a year right before Christmas, that was a windfall to that family where they maybe could buy Christmas presents for their kids that they couldn't have otherwise afforded. And these out-of-touch elitist liberals up here that just look down on people like that, saying, "Oh, that's just crumbs, and you don't deserve that anyway." That's how they feel.
Let me ask you this. We're going through, I think, a pretty difficult time. We've spent a year of the news media in this country, Democrats in this country, accusing the president of some type of collusion with Russia in the lead up to the election. You've had an opportunity to read all the information as everybody else does. Do you see any evidence of such?
No. And when you look at what President Trump's done, I mean, he said, look, here's everything, and they've even implied that there is no collusion that they've been able to find, yet they just keep going down this witch hunt. And it's real concerning, and where does it end? But at least President Trump's not being deterred by it. He's every time you meet with him in small settings, and I know you know Donald Trump really well. He's a man who, when he's sitting in a meeting, he's all business. How do I get the economy moving? How do I improve the lives of struggling people, those forgotten men and women that elected him president of the United States? And he's fulfilling those promises to them. And I think that's what liberals hate the most, is that Donald Trump got elected. They didn't want him to get elected. They try to act like he's not president, and he's doing the things that he said he would do, which is, they go run around spewing lies and never follow through on their promises. And he's actually getting stuff done that he said he would do as president.
I mean, that's the thing. Now, what do you make of? Have you taken the time? I don't know if you've been well enough to go over. Did you go over and see this memo that the House Intel Committee voted out yesterday, and that the president will decide if it's going to go public, or the White House will?
Actually, I have an appointment to read it this evening, so they have, before the State of the Union, they have time set up for me to go read it. I was real happy. I talked to Devin Nunes yesterday and commended him and his committee on voting to release it. And frankly, I think that's the way it should go. Just the fact that you see Nancy Pelosi and these liberals going nuts trying still to prevent this thing from being released tells you there must be something really going on there that the public should see about. So I'm going to review it later today, but everybody I've talked to that's read it said it's very concerning, number one, but it ought to be released publicly.
Well, I think the public has a right to know. When you look at everything that we do know on this front, I mean, I think we have a lot of information. I mean, we do know that laws were broken. We know look, I read 18 U.S.C. 793 and all the different codes that are associated with this, but the mishandling of classified, top secret, special access programming information, that is all against the law. If you have 33,000 emails you delete after they're subpoenaed, that is against the law. If you destroy top secret, classified, special access program information, that is against the law. And if you want nobody to ever find it again and you use acid wash and bleach bit, that's a crime. And then you break up blackberries with hammers, that seems like obstruction to me. Then we find out that the FBI director at the time, James Comey, in early May, is writing an exoneration along with Peter Strzok, a guy who, along with his mistress, is calling the president a lonesome human being, talking about their support of Hillary, F Trump, and everything in between. They are writing an exoneration months before they ever interview Hillary Clinton or the other people that should be investigated. Did you ever hear of law enforcement working that way in your life? I haven't.
It's nuts, Sean. And hey, look, the good news is the public saw all of this in 2016 during the election. President Trump surely talked about it everywhere he went, but ultimately I think that was part of Hillary Clinton's undoing is, what are you doing trying to destroy evidence like this? I mean, that's a federal crime to destroy federal evidence, and I think it really hurt her credibility amongst swing voters who might have otherwise looked at her and they realized, I'm not going there, and Donald Trump was able to get a lot of those votes who swing back and forth because.
Well, I get it might have influenced, but the fact is, if Comey and Strzok and others and McCabe are all exonerating her and then not following the rule of law, I mean, doesn't it sound? If you look at 18 U.S. Code 793, doesn't it appear that she violated laws and that they gave her a pass? And that the fix was in, and that it might have been rigged from the beginning.
Was in was just what I was thinking, and luckily they weren't able to fix it. They tried, but they weren't able to. But you're right. I mean, there are laws that are on the books, and whether they gave immunity or said you can get off the hook. That's not the way our system's supposed to work.
Yeah. What do you think should happen from here? In other words, if we have a situation that, look at the dossier situation as one example. It was bought and paid for by Hillary and her campaign and the DNC. So my question is, that was phony Russian propaganda. She bought and paid for it. That's fine. She can buy whatever she wants. If she wants to mislead the American people, I guess they then can make their own decision. But when you find out it was used as the foundation for a FISA warrant against an opposition party candidate in an election year and then a president-elect, do you have a problem with that?
Yeah, I think it raises serious questions about the credibility of the investigation. I think our members on the Oversight Committee, you see Jim Jordan out there, Gates and Trey Gowdy and others that have been pointing a lot of this out and uncovering it. Frankly, Sean, we might not have known about a lot of this if those members that I mentioned and others, like Devin Nunes, have been out there uncovering what we now know. And it's concerning what we've been able to find out, and we're going to keep digging and finding more.
What do you want the Republican Party to do this year? We keep hearing, usually in off years elections after a presidential race, usually the party that came to the White House in power, they tend to lose seats. Are you worried about this election? And if you are, what would be the advice you'd give the leadership, which you are a part of, but Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, and maybe if you ever talk to Mitch McConnell, who hates my guts, what you would say to him?
Well, first of all, I would say that we ought to be concerned about this election cycle because liberals have never been more energized that I've seen them. I mean, they're turning out in record numbers in some of these other races. And so any member in a swing district ought to be ready. I've talked to a lot of my colleagues that are in those tough districts. The good news is they know what's coming, and they're preparing for a really tough race. And so, that's how we're going to keep our majority is by going and fighting in these tough races and making sure that our members are ready to go to battle because it's going to be a battle. But I'd also say to go big. Be bold just like we have been. This tax cut bill, it's historic. I mean, 1986, when Ronald Reagan was president, was the last time we truly reformed our tax code, and we're already seeing benefits just weeks later. And this is going to continue, Sean. We need to keep telling this story because the mainstream media is not telling people just yesterday that Exxon gave a $50 billion commitment to invest more in America. And it's happening every day. And local businesses are doing the same thing in each of our communities. And we need to be featuring those as members, going back home and telling people how our local businesses. I've got a local brewery called Gnarly Barley in Hammond, Louisiana, 6-person operation. Because of the tax cut bill, they're finally able to provide health care benefits to their employees for the first time ever. That's real benefits to real families because of what we did, and we need to do more. We're going to have workforce challenges because now you're seeing all of this hiring. Companies are investing in their workers. You had millions of people under Barack Obama who just gave up on looking for a job because the economy was so bad under Obama. It's the reverse now. We need to encourage people to get back into the workforce and making sure that our welfare programs work not to disincentivize somebody to work, but actually help people get back into the workforce where they can become part of the American dream again. That's something we ought to focus on front and center. And obviously there are a lot of other things that we ought to be focusing on too this year. But I would say stay big and bold, working with this president who is following through on the promises, and there's more that this president wants to do. President Trump wants to stay aggressive, and we ought to be right there with him working to get that done.
We're glad you're back. We're glad you're healthy. I know you've been through a lot. Your family has been through a lot. Congressman Steve Scalise, God bless you and your family, and especially those officers that were there for you that day. They were true heroes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, my friend.
Capitol Police were heroes. Sean, great to be with you again.
Appreciate it. 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. We'll get Newt Gingrich's take on this blockbuster information and all the comings and goings, what he'd like to see in the President's State of the Union tonight. All right, we're in Washington State of the Union tonight at 9. We'll be on right after on Hannity, or you can go to Hannity.com for the Deplorables Party. Have an online viewing. Should have some fun to meet other deplorables.
Congressman, there are Democrats who are saying that what the Republicans are doing with this memo and just a general drumbeat up on Capitol Hill is trying to diminish Robert Mueller and his investigation.
Yeah, I think it was 2 days ago I said I support Bob Mueller 100%. I wasn't a math major. I don't think you can support someone more than 100%. So, look, my Democrat colleagues didn't want us to find this information. They did everything they could to keep us from finding this information. So, of course, they don't want us to share.
Will it be embarrassing to them?
I think it'll be embarrassing to Adam Schiff once people realize the extent to which he went to keep them from learning any of this. So that would be the embarrassment.
Go ahead. What do you mean by that?
I mean, going to court to help Fusion GPS, so we can't find out that they paid for the dossier and that they were working for the DNC. That's a pretty big step to go to court to try to keep the American people from learning something. So, look, if it were up to Adam Schiff, you wouldn't know about Hillary Clinton's email. You wouldn't know about the server. You wouldn't know who paid for the dossier. So I do find it ironic that he has his own memo now, because if it were up to him, we wouldn't know any of it.
All right, hour 2, Sean Hannity Show. That was Trey Gowdy. Glad you're with us. We're at our nation's capital. State of the Union address is coming up tonight, 9 Eastern. Hannity immediately thereafter. Joining us now is former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor, author of many best-selling books. I think your best-selling book, though, was Understanding Trump, wasn't it?
It really was. It was amazingly successful because people were fascinated with this guy who had come out of nowhere, beaten 16 Republicans, beat Hillary Clinton, beat the elite media, and they wanted to understand him better. So and tonight I think will be a really important State of the Union. I think he's laying out, as he did in Davos, in the clip you had just now, he's laying out what Trumpism is all about. And also he's in a position now to talk as a winner, not just as a fighter, because look at the real results of the tax cuts. Look what's happening to everyday American people. By the way,
you mean you're talking about the crumbs Nancy Pelosi calls, $2,000 bonuses and pay increases and tax cuts that will maybe in many cases be $4,000 additional dollars a year for people.
Well, but let me give you an example. In Joe Kennedy's giving the Democratic answer tonight. In his district, the Ways and Means Committee figured out that a median family of 4 gets a $5,800 tax break. Now, that means that Joe Kennedy's got to explain why he voted against the people of Massachusetts in his district having $5,800 more in their pocket. And remember, over 10 years, that's $58,000 in their pocket. That's for a family of 4. And I think Republicans are just going to get dramatically better at explaining the power of what Trump is doing. You get Walmart employees getting bonuses. You've got people all over the country getting bonuses. You have small businesses hiring people. The president has a guest tonight who I think has almost doubled his workforce because of the tax cuts. I just flew back today from Rome. I just landed in Washington a few minutes ago. And one of the people I flew with today said he is expanding his business because of the tax cuts. He said, I cannot tell you how much more business we're going to do and how much more we're going to invest in creating jobs because of that tax cut.
I mean, that's the amazing thing. I mean, all the economic activity that's taken place. I won't reiterate. I did it in the last half hour with Steve Scalise. But 2.2 million new jobs, 2 million fewer people on food stamps, and the lowest unemployment numbers for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, 17-year low unemployment for women in America. I mean, these are great numbers. I think it's all fantastic, and especially getting rid of some of the burdensome regulation of government is a great thing. The media never talks about it, though. We've had a year of nonstop talk about one issue, Trump-Russian collusion. I, to this day, can't find anybody that has any evidence of such. So I would argue that he did all of this under. Well, but they do make it up. I mean, but it's problematic. It's been problematic for the president and for the White House, and Robert Mueller's still doing his thing.
I think that Mueller is the greatest threat to the Trump presidency because, as a prosecutor who has been given to an absurd level an ability to look at anything, it just sets up an almost impossible situation. And you have to ask yourself, for example, at a point in time when people were cooperating, when Paul Manafort was literally cooperating with the Senate and House committees, Mueller got permission to break into his house at 3 a.m. with people with weapons while Manafort and his wife were in bed. And you have to say to yourself, what exactly is the deep state trying to tell are they trying to intimidate all of us? Are they say, on the other hand, of course, if you are a Clinton staffer, you're treated with kid gloves, you're not indicted, you're not in trouble, you don't have any difficulty. And I think this has got to, in part, be a year in which we really have a clear choice for the American people. You've learned now beyond any doubt that there were significant people at the senior level of the FBI who had gone off the tracks and who were pro-Clinton, anti-Trump in ways that totally threatened to discredit the system and, frankly, are dangerous. You can't have the nation's leading police force have people in the senior ranks who are politically that prejudiced.
What do you make of the fact that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, his girlfriend, are still at the FBI? What do you make of the firing of Andrew McCabe? He was let go. He was removed from that post. We're told from some reporting, Sarah Carter among them, that this exit is only the beginning of more resignations to come. And on top of,
I don't see how Peter Strzok survives. I mean,
why is he there now?
Well, I agree with you, but this is a place where, frankly, I'm very disappointed in Attorney General Sessions. He did not recuse himself from being responsible for managing the department. I mean, he can claim he's got a deal where he's not supposed to do something to Miller, but in the case of Strzok, the Attorney General should be able to reach in there and suspend him immediately. I don't understand why he's not doing it.
Mr. Speaker, you know me a lot over the years, and the things that I know and the things that are coming to pass are about as troubling as anything I've ever seen in my life. I mean, let's put aside that we know Hillary rigged the primary election. I can only imagine what the media would be saying if it was Donald Trump. But then you have James Comey and Strzok and Page and apparently Andrew McCabe. And it even seems Loretta Lynch knew ahead of time that they were never going to hold Hillary accountable for known felonies that were committed with the email server scandal. It's, 18 U.S. Code 793. It is incontrovertible. She broke the law on multiple occasions. So they put the fix in for her so she can continue as a presidential candidate. Then she bought and paid for a Russian dossier. You can't make this up, full of salacious lies. That's to manipulate the general election and lie to the American people. And then that same dossier that Fusion GPS never verified, and they helped dispense, according to one testimony of Glenn Simpson, to the news media that's gullible. But then they use that as a foundation to spy on an opposition candidate in an election year and then a president-elect. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking this goes against every single fundamental right we have in our Constitution against unreasonable search and seizure, and it happened. And not only did it happen, but the news media is ignoring it all.
I would say that half or more of what we have come to learn, we've come to learn from investigative reporters on your show. I mean, you have personally pulled together more information about how sick the system got than NBC, CBS, ABC combined. Now, that's kind of astonishing. I mean, it's a tribute to you, and it's a tribute to the very smart people you have on the show. But it's also a really sad comment on where the elite media is. And, I was saying with this over the weekend because it is, if you're a normal person, you're leading a normal life, and these things come and go, and you hear it and you think, wow, that's weird. But you don't quite get the rhythm of all of it. And I was talking to a reporter who was genuinely trying to understand this, which was sort of an interesting experience. But
luck with that.
It reminded me. I have a system I call putting the dots on the wall until the dots tell you whether it's a rhinoceros or a kangaroo or whatever. You just keep putting dots up. And so I want to suggest to you, and we'll see what your audience thinks of this, that you ought to think about putting together sort of a giant chart that would take the last few years, going back to Rod Rosenstein, who I think was actually in charge of the Uranium One investigation at one point.
Right.
And looking at, if you look at the way all these people weave together, it is stunningly incestuous.
They've spent their whole careers together. They all know each other. Listen, I've got to be honest. Here's what I don't understand either. I remember, and you and I often kid you about this because I kind of like to think that I paved my own way in this business, and I don't want to be like everybody else. I think the media is a bunch of sheep. I think they lie for a living. They've lied to the American people for a year. And my gut instincts, tell me to go in one direction. And I felt it was necessary to vet, for example, Barack Obama. I thought it was necessary 8 years later to point out that his policies had failed. These are all stories the country ignored. I mean, imagine if the picture of Louis Farrakhan, an anti-Semite and a racist, had shown up that existed before Obama ran in 2008. It would fit into the Ayers and Dorn and Acorn and Alinsky and Reverend Wright narrative. And there was a picture at the Congressional Black Caucus event of some kind. And it's the same thing here. I feel the media, with no evidence, has gone with a story that has been fake, phony, and fraudulent. And I think we have looked at something that may be the biggest scandal in American history. And I don't think I'm overstating the case.
No, I think that's right. I mean, first of all, I will confess that when you were really aggressively going after the radical links to Obama, I thought at the time you were overdoing it. And it was only later I realized how 100% you were the only person who really understood what all those different linkages meant. And you therefore had a much better sense of how radical Obama's administration was. So my hat's off.
No. But you also knew that there were people that wanted to destroy me at the time and want to silence my voice today.
Of course, look, but you've chosen sides in what is a cultural civil war.
Yes, I have.
I mean, and so guess what? The other side doesn't like it.
This is why I love you so much. And the other side doesn't like you, and they hate you. Come out and say it.
It goes with the territory because you have been insisting on pulling the threads together. You've been insisting on highlighting the aggressive young investigative reporters who are making such a difference. And I think literally half of all the coverage of the totality of this scandal has been on your show, which is both a great compliment to you and a great condemnation of so much of the news media that's not covered it. But I do get a sense that the leakage is breaking down.
I hope you're right. I mean, I hope to God you're right. All right, hang on. We got to take a break. Newt Gingrich is with us, and obviously, Newt's. Are you really working on another Trump book? I'm interested to hear about that.
I'm working on a book. Yeah, I'm working on a book called Trump's America.
All right,
and we're very excited by it. It builds on the next stage.
I want to ask you if Trump is a conservative or a national populist when we get back, because I think he's governing conservatively. All right, as we continue, former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich is with us. All right, so what advice would you give the president for tonight? Because I think this is going to be a pretty amazing story to tell in 1 year, a pretty big turnaround.
Well, I think, first of all, that he should be talking as president of the whole country, not as the leader of one faction. I think he should be talking as a winner, emphasizing the remarkable story of what's been happening with the economy. And why, and explaining why it's happening. Because one of the arguments we have to win this year is that, in fact, Trumpism works and liberalism fails. And we have to get that across to people so that they understand this is not an accident, but it's the victory of sound policy after a long period of the country doing dumb things.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. But the other thing I'll say is I hope that he will stay focused from now through Sunday on driving the messages of tonight. Do not take the bait. The elite media is going to be desperate to get him off message and get him off track and get him into some kind of junk. And he's got very powerful messages he's going to deliver tonight, and he ought to find every way for his cabinet and his White House team and himself to stay on that and drive it through the Sunday talk shows and just learn how to dominate the elite media and not let them set the agenda.
I think that's all important, but I also think that there is a great story to tell. And I think I just hope the Republicans are smart enough to follow through on health care and to build the wall. Those are the two big things, I think, for 2018.
Well, first of all, I think they're going to continue moving in that direction. He's made that clear. I think they also have to spend a lot of their time this year driving home the impact and the power of the combination of deregulation and tax cuts. I mean, the fact is, and you said this in the last segment, we have the lowest black unemployment in many, many, many years, maybe in history. Well, how many African Americans understand that that's Donald Trump's policies?
Well,
and I think,
yeah, and I think that's going to make the difference. All right, Mr. Speaker, we're glad you're back from Italy, and we'll see you on Hannity coming up this week. Thank you for being with us. Quick break, right back.
You were saying that essentially Republicans have cherry-picked facts from the classified information that they were given to form a narrative that is, in your opinion, not correct?
Not only not correct, but deeply misleading.
Intentionally misleading?
Intentionally misleading. Absolutely intentionally misleading.
All you need to understand is that the Republicans declared war today on our national security, on classified information.
I think we're seeing a breakdown of democracy here. We've never had a situation in which the Congress has moved into a criminal investigation and turned it into a political circus. And that's exactly what's going on here.
It looks a lot like Watergate. It also has fringes of the Salem witch trials. And you throw in the McCarthy hearings, and I think we've got one crisis about to happen here.
Because it's not even true. It's not even true. They have made up a memo that isn't even true, and they're lying to the American
people. So what are you
going
to do about it? We are seeing a breakdown, and I think we may look back on tonight as the Monday night slaughter of the administration of justice and our institutions of justice in the United States. A real slaughter by an obstructive, irresponsible, partisan gang in the House of Representatives.
I can't discuss the contents of the memo, but I can say it's worse than a nothing burger. It's like having nothing mustard. There is factual inaccuracies that's misleading.
This is a cynical game that Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy and Devin Nunes and anybody that empowers Devin Nunes is playing. They push to release a memo that is distorted by what's in it and what's distorted by what is not in it. And they know that will misinform the public. But they also know this, Mika. They know that the facts that would actually allow Americans to know the entire truth about what happened are so highly classified that guess what? The public will never get to see those details, and for good reason, because we don't want classified information out. So Ryan and Nunes want to release a half-truth that turns out to be a whole lie.
I mean, I've read it, and I've read the underlying source material. It is profoundly misleading.
So you read it, and you weren't concerned about things. You don't have further questions about the FISA process?
No.
All right, now you have Democrats reacting to the memo that I would assume now that the House Intel Committee is voted out of committee. The White House has 5 days to make a decision about whether or not they will be releasing it. The White House has said they're going to be deliberative and in the process and go through, think through all the ramifications of this. Joining us now is Congressman Louis Gohmert of Texas as we come to you from Washington, D.C. tonight. And Congressman Matt Gaetz will be joining us in a minute from Florida. Louis, you on day one, the first day it was available, you took the walk and you went over and you signed your life away and you said you would never tell anybody what's in the memo. But I applaud Devin Nunes and I applaud the people on the House Intel Committee because I do think, based on the reports of people that I have talked to, this is going to shock the conscience and soul of the country, and that we're literally facing a crisis of whether or not our government is using the powerful tools of intelligence to spy on Americans without a warrant.
I don't think there's any question they've been using the tools to spy on Americans. That's a given. It's whether or not they were justified in doing so. And as you have talked about more and more articulately than most anybody, this is a constitutional crisis. When one party tries to prevent another from claiming the actual win of an election, first to prevent them from winning the election, and then the insurance policy, if they do, to try to take them out of office. And the last thing we needed was Mueller to be appointed. And I tell you, Sean, in our Judiciary Committee today, we had a hearing on a bill involving construction liability, and the Democrats kept going back and back again to how outrageous the Republicans' conduct was. But I told them, and I'm telling you, I have gone back and looked at some of the Watergate hearings, and it makes me proud the way Republicans stood up even to other Republicans. They didn't try to cover from Nixon or any wrongdoing. They stood up and said, this is wrong if we're going to keep this little democratic republic. And I'm still asking, where are the Democrats that will stand up and say, this is a threat to our democracy? The DOJ, the intelligence agency, they were weaponized and used against another party. They combined the DOJ and the intel with the Democratic Party opposition and tried to prevent a guy from getting elected and then tried to take him out after elected. This is as dangerous as it gets. We've moved into third world areas here when one party uses the power of the government as their political tool. It's a dangerous time.
You have been, and I remember when they were talking about Robert Mueller, he's a man of the best integrity, and then I think that we have done the deepest dive of anybody in the media in terms of looking at the team that he's appointed. I mean, people like Andrew Weissman that, because of his brutal prosecutorial tactics, cost tens of thousands of people at Anderson Accounting to lose their job. And then yet he's overturned in the Supreme Court 9-0. Or the Merrill executives. You may not like people that work for Merrill Lynch, but they don't deserve to go to jail when it's overturned by the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. But you've talked about Mueller himself and have said you do not believe he is the person of objectivity and integrity that others have been claiming.
I know he is not. If you look at the things he did, the policies he put in place, got rid of thousands and thousands of years of experience of FBI agents. He did so much damage there. He purged the training material so that our FBI agents would not know the proper questions to ask to find radical Islamists. He got rid of some training material programs that would teach people. I mean, I was going after him over the Boston bombing that should never have happened. Those people should be alive and have their limbs. If Mueller had not been playing patty cake with the Islamists, they went out questioning Sonia, but because of Robert Mueller, they didn't know what to ask. He prevented them from knowing what to ask and how to find radical Islamists. This man has done so much damage. And then you look at the two guys he went after for sending anthrax. They were given an FBI profile since they knew that radical Islam was experimenting with weaponizing anthrax. He pushed that aside and said, no, it's probably a veteran, some conservative that hates the country. They destroyed a man's life for which they ended up paying $6 million for having the wrong guy. Even Bush was begging Mueller, look, are you sure? There's just no evidence. He said, I'm 100% sure. Well, he was 100% wrong. Look at what happened to Ted Stevens under Mueller. Biggest case he had, and what happened? They invented a case. People should have gone to prison for inventing a case and keeping Stevens from having his own defensive materials so that he could have been found not guilty. And what happened when the FBI agent blew the whistle on this prosecutorial misconduct, this invented case? Well, they got rid of him and the person that was the most devious and underhanded. She promotes and she goes on and keeps working cases. This is the Mueller I've come to know.
Now, let me go back to the memo. Congressman Matt Gaetz is joining us late, where there's no excuse for being late, and that will impact your final grade on the show. But in all seriousness, now that we are going to, I assume we're going to see the memo. I've got to believe that after the White House has a chance to look at this, and they've said they want to be deliberative, and they want to give this some thought and some time, but they tend to err on the side of being transparent with the American people, which I think is the right decision. What are the American people going to conclude? Matt Gaetz, you've seen it.
I believe the American people will demand reforms to the surveillance processes, and I think that there's going to be an acute awareness about the role of our intelligence community, particularly as it relates to political parties. And any sort of crossover or influence or bias. I think there'll be calls for broad reform in those areas, and I think that those should be bipartisan, Sean. I mean, why in the world Democrats would be fighting against transparency, fighting against the information we need to know what our government is doing is beyond me. This is an opportunity for a bipartisan moment to step forward and say, we don't want these things that are laid out in the memo to happen in our country going forward, no matter which political party is in power. And, Sean, the reason I was late, if there's any excuse for tardiness, I was reading the Democrat memo that largely is a press release. It is not a statement of facts of the case. It is intended.
By the way, somebody that read it, an unnamed source, told me today that it like an eighth grader could have written this thing, and it gave no information whatsoever, and it was just a lame attempt to smear people.
Well, the other good thing for the country is that when we release both memos, and by the way, I think we should actually release.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I agree. Release them both.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no Republicans are going to stand in the way of the release of the Democrat memo so long as no sources and methods are disclosed in it. But I think that what's important is that there are facts stated that can be verified, and there are misstatements of fact that can also be verified. And so the release of these memos won't be the end-all, be-all. I think it will launch us into a productive discussion about what happened, what was presented to courts, how was information validated, and is that the type of system that we want occurring in secret in this country going forward? And again, Sean, I'm hopeful that this presents an opportunity for bipartisanship. Nothing from the Democrats has shown to date that that's possible. And frankly, if I was President Trump, I'd walk right into the State of the Union, walk up to Speaker Ryan's desk, and hand him my consent to release the memo immediately. Let's get the process started.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll continue more with Matt Gaetz, Congressman from Florida, Louis Gohmert, our friend from Texas, both members of the Freedom Caucus, some of the few people we can trust in D.C. We're in our nation's capital. Tonight, Hannity, immediately after the State of the Union with the president, will obviously have reaction to that, and when the White House might sign off on the House intel and their willingness now to release the memo to the public. With Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida, Congressman Louis Gohmert of the great state of Texas. Louis Gohmert, last year you were kind enough to let me sit in the gallery and watch Donald Trump address a joint session of Congress, and it was the thrill of a lifetime. You also allowed me to be at Obama's last State of the Union address. The reason I can't be there this year is because I'm actually picking up the coverage as soon as it's over, and I wouldn't make it to the cameras in time.
Yeah, well, you've shown you can you can take the good times and the bad times by those two speeches a year apart. So, but look, I keep thinking at some point there's going to be a Democrat that stands up and says, you know what, this is a threat to the Democratic Republic we've been handed. We have got to quit playing politics. They did weaponize the DOJ. They did weaponize our intelligence assets. And it is time to hold these people accountable, and that person will be a national treasure, a national hero for decades to come. The danger is if somebody doesn't step up, then they divide the country irreparably, and we're not probably going to be around in 40 or 50 years to look back at how the Democrats played politics.
We can't let that happen. Matt Gaetz.
That's right.
I'm assuming once the American people become fully aware of all the abuses that have taken place at the top levels of the FBI and the DOJ, the changes are going to take place.
I have no doubt. Changes are already taking place, Sean. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that Andrew McCabe, days after giving testimony before the Judiciary Committee, announced that he would ultimately retire. And then immediately after Christopher Wray read this memo, Andrew McCabe decided that he would leave the FBI immediately, and I don't know that we'll see him at any point again. And so I think that there are going to be personnel changes. I hope there are policy changes. Frankly, I think the president is going to learn a lot about what's been happening during his administration when full facts are revealed. And I think that the time period for this memo is going to be important to evaluate. This does not take us all the way up to the present time. This memo analyzes a finite period of time, and it raises a lot of questions about the activities that occurred both before and after the time period of the memo. And it's why it's so important, Sean, that we get the full volume of text messages between Pierce Strzok and Lisa Page, because they...
Well, there's 50,000. I think release them immediately. Thank you both for all that you're doing here. We really appreciate it. When we come back, new information. Sarah Carter, investigative reporter. Greg Jarrett will give us the legal side of all this. More of our preview of the president and the State of the Union tonight. Hannity on immediately thereafter, and we'll continue from our nation's capital.
The highway is littered with those who tried and failed to take down Trump and got kicked to the curb. Today's road rash victim, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe.
McCabe's wife received $700,000 in political contributions from one of Clinton's closest personal friends, Terry McCullough.
Join us in wishing Andy a happy early retirement. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
Do you feel like you know significant new facts that have been placed onto the record of your investigation, even if they're not public yet, that we didn't know 6 months ago?
I believe I've seen, particularly in the document area, extraordinarily important new documents that I had not seen 6 months ago. Now, the veracity or truthfulness of those documents are something we're trying to either corroborate or not. I think there are, remember, a whole lot of the original allegations, for example, in the so-called Steele memo, are still sitting out there. In my mind, one of the most amazing things is whether Mr. Trump or his campaign colluded or not, the fact that there is this explosive dossier that's been in the public realm for a year plus, and whether enormous scrutiny from the press, or for that matter, work of the American government, that so little of that dossier has either been fully proven or conversely disproven. That's pretty amazing, because as long as that sits out there, there's going to be a cloud that hangs over this administration.
We are looking at the possibility that the President of the United States and those around him during an election campaign colluded with a hostile foreign power to undermine the basis of our democracy.
Donald Trump is afraid. A political hurricane is out there at sea for him. We'll call it Hurricane Vladimir, if you will, the whole Russian thing.
This is evidence of willingness to commit collusion.
There's outright treason. I mean, there is no question that what he is doing is giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
This cloud about collusion with Russia will hang over him no matter where he stands.
It certainly feels like we're in the opening stages of a devastating political chapter in American history.
Tom Friedman said the election hacking is at the caliber of a Pearl Harbor or a 9/11. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. Donald Trump now sits at the threshold of impeachment.
You told the Washington Post last week that, quote, there's a smell of treason in the air when it comes to this investigation.
A lot of people are afraid to use the T word, treason, but in the end, that's what people are investigating.
There's any day to be watching Ari. It is today. Russia, Russia, Russia. A lot going on.
All right, as we continue, we're at the Swamp. We're at our nation's capital, 800-941-SEAN, our toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of the program. Yes, in a little less than 4 hours from right now, President Trump will give his first State of the Union address, and we'll have full coverage immediately thereafter. President usually goes an hour, half, 45, somewhere in there, and we'll be coming on right then on the Fox News Channel. We'll also be covering our big story that we have been following, and it is a bombshell, and that is the House Intel Committee has, in fact, voted out the memo that we believe is going to show widespread FISA abuse, which is huge. The White House has said to me that they're going to be deliberative, they're going to be sober, and they're going to really take their time and go over it and not rush. They want to make sure that there will be nothing in the memo that might in some way compromise national security. Joining us now with reaction to it, we have Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, and Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, Fox News contributor. Welcome, both of you, to the program. You broke a lot of news yesterday, Sarah. Let's go back to that and talk about the legality of all this with Greg Jarrett.
Yes, so I've been, of course, we've been looking at the reasons why Andy McCabe may have left earlier than was expected. He was supposed to retire actually in March. That was announced in December. What we know is that FBI Director Wray went to view the FISA memo on Sunday, this past Sunday, and then Monday morning, McCabe was out. So the deputy director then immediately was, I was told by sources, asked to resign earlier than March, and he left. It's interesting, Sean, former FBI Director Comey tweeted out today about McCabe and said McCabe held his head up high, although small people, quote unquote, were trying to take him down. But this is no small subject. This is about extensive FISA abuse. And according to sources that I've spoken with, and remember, these are just allegations so far, we're still trying to verify all of these pieces, that the IG, as well as others, have information that whistleblowers have gone to the IG and reported that McCabe actually asked FBI agents to change their 302 witness interview forms.
By the way, but that would be obstruction of justice by any definition, because the 302 interview forms, that's a formal interview that the FBI gives to people that they're investigating or witnesses that they're talking to.
Correct, because those are for example, they go and they interview someone, as they did with former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, and they would sit down, do an interview with him, and then they would go back and fill out these reports. They're called 302 forms, and I'm sure Greg has a lot of information on the legality of these things, but they fill them out. And according to the sources that I've spoken with, the allegation is that McCabe inferenced or made some suggestions to changing the 302, which whistleblowers then reported to the IG. And that would be very significant, because that would, I believe, and I'm not a legal expert here, I'll let Greg talk about that, be some type of obstruction in an investigation.
Yeah, Greg, let's talk about the legality of what we're talking about here. And I actually think the White House is smart. I mean, the president's first State of the Union address is coming. This vote came out of committee yesterday somewhere around 6:30, 7 o'clock Eastern. The president has 5 days to go over the memo that was put out by the House Intel Committee. And then from there, he will make a decision saying that he wants to be as transparent as possible. But let's talk about specifically what Sarah's mentioning here.
Yeah, the 302 forms, if those were altered, that's obstruction of justice. Under the obstruction statute, you have to be able to prove that it was a corrupt act. Well, there are only 5 kinds of corrupt acts: a lie, a threat, a bribe, hiding evidence, or, and this is the most important one, destroying or altering documents. So if 302s were altered to misrepresent the truth, that's obstruction of justice quite clearly. And if this Intel memo identifies that, people who did it and people who conspired to do it or were complicit in doing it should be charged with obstruction of justice. But beyond that, I think what we're going to find out is that people used the dossier to spy, knowing that it was a dubious, if not false, document on its face. That is an abuse of power. That, too, is a violation of a federal felony statute.
When we go, back to the beginning here, because I think we really have to go to the beginning. And Sarah's talking about something as it involves Comey's statement. Comey seems to be losing it to me. Like he is sitting there as sanctimoniously on his high horse, as if he's got some superiority feeling over Donald Trump, where I would argue that maybe James Comey ought to be shutting up and talking to his lawyers a little more. Greg, do you know what I mean? Isn't there vulnerabilities for him at this point if he put the fix in as it relates to the Hillary email investigation, if he leaked information that was proprietary and classified as it relates to in government materials to a friend to leak to create a special counsel? We're also told he coordinated his testimony with Robert Mueller, who was then appointed special counsel. I mean, I think he's got some legal potential vulnerabilities himself, doesn't he?
Oh, he's in absolute legal jeopardy, and the more he talks about or sends Twitter messages in a sort of holier-than-thou vein, the worse he makes it for himself. The people who enforce the laws are human beings, too, and they don't like to see that sort of thing coming from somebody who is and could be and should be a subject or target of a criminal investigation. It's the equivalent of taunting. And it's unwise to do. Comey, who is a veteran lawyer, should know better, but he can't help himself, never has. He's the guy who loves to pretend he's a Boy Scout, when in fact he's just the opposite of that. And I think his actions betray him in leaking evidence and including classified documents and obstructing justice in clearing Hillary Clinton in the face of overwhelming evidence of guilt.
One of the things, Sarah, you were reporting last night, too, that this probably is just the first that will fall in what is a widespread scandal. Again, not rank and file, but the upper echelons of DOJ and FBI. In other words, that, there are other big names that are vulnerable. I, for the life of me, don't understand how Peter Strzok and Lisa Page even have a job at this point.
Yes, and you're right. This is just the beginning, according to a number of people that I've spoken with. And what's really interesting now, I think that there's a sense of relief among the rank and file FBI agents and people within the Bureau because they actually see something being done. I know that when McCabe was asked to leave, when he resigned on Monday, there was a real widespread sense of relief. I had some phone calls on Monday, and people felt more emboldened. They said something's actually happening here within the Bureau. We're going to be able to clean out the 7th floor. Director Ray's moving in the right direction. Apparently, there were people calling from all the field offices. Well,
by the way, we can't forget that James Baker and Ribicki are already gone also.
That's right. I was just going to say that, Sean. So James Baker is no longer general counsel there. Ribicki has also resigned. So we see 3 big top people within the FBI now gone, and I think we're going to see a lot more. I don't think it's over for Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. I think that it's coming down the pike for them as well, and I don't see them there much longer either, according to what I've been hearing and the reports that I've been hearing. But I also think we have to look at what Greg brought up as far as Director Comey. I think we need to go back and remember, and you said, Sean, go back to the beginning, and that's a good point. Remember, it was Director Comey leaked those memos to his close friend, the Professor Richmond. He leaked those memos, some of which were classified, in order to seek a special counsel. He was very vocal about that. I mean, this is what really pushed over and moved towards the special counsel and the investigation into the president. So it's concerning that he continually keeps tweeting about this because he's really kind of at the center of this controversy.
We'll take a break, and we'll come back and continue with our good friends Greg Jarrett and Sarah Carter. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number. We're in Washington, D.C. The president will be given his first State of the Union address, full coverage tonight, Fox News Channel, and we pick up the coverage somewhere, I think, a little before 11 o'clock when the president's all done. Hope you'll join us tonight. We'll have the latest, obviously, on the developments involving McCabe and what else we might discover when the memo is released. That's Hannity tonight, right after the State of the Union. We'll continue from D.C. And as we continue, Greg Jarrett is with us, Fox News legal analyst, Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, Fox News contributor, as the Sean Hannity Show, as we continue from Washington, D.C. State of the Union tonight. I was talking to Sarah as we were going to the break, Greg, and we were talking about, all right, let's go back to the origins of all of this. The origins are really simple. You've got Hillary Clinton breaks laws, fundamental laws, and puts an email server up that we now know was hacked by multiple foreign intelligence agencies. And then she covers it up by acid washing and bleach bit and deleting and breaking up devices with hammers. And then Comey, Strzok, Page, potentially Andrew McCabe and Loretta Lynch all put the fix in, so she continues to be the Democratic nominee. Others, I believe, would have been charged with crimes. Then she pays for the Russian dossier to influence the general election. She did rob poor Bernie Sanders of any chance he had because that primary was rigged. Anyway, not only is the dossier designed to manipulate the American people with Russian lies, then it's used to get a FISA warrant. Let's go through the legal aspects of all of that. I know that's a lot to talk about, but that's, where we are.
Well, in terms of her emails, Hillary Clinton appears to have committed a violation of 2 different provisions of the Espionage Act, intentionally mishandling classified documents, and grossly negligent handling. She also is violating another felony statute, knowingly removing classified documents, another provision, theft of government documents, yet another felony statute, concealing, removing, or destroying government documents, another statute of obstruction of justice in destroying them, and finally making a material false statement to Congress. So what do we have there? 7 or 8 different violations of law for which she should have been indicted by a grand jury, but was saved by Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, James Comey, McCabe, Ribicki, Baker, the whole gang. But then you have to factor in, why did she create a secret server in the basement of her home? My theory has always been it was not convenience, but concealment. She wanted to conceal her foundation's pay-to-play.
I think it was that, and she also she didn't want government oversight. She didn't want,
That's right.
which, by the way, is part of the government. I'm going to have to let this go. I wish I had more time for all of you, and I really appreciate you being with us. You guys have been phenomenal. We'll have you back tomorrow as we prepare to hopefully see the memo by either late tomorrow or Thursday. I'm pretty confident that memo will be released.
The highway is littered with those who tried and failed to take down Trump and got kicked to the curb. Today's road rash victim, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe.
McCabe's wife received $700,000 in political contributions from one of the Clintons' closest personal friends, and Terry McAuliffe.
Join us in wishing Andy a happy early retirement. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, glad you're with us. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. All right, let me play. So with the State of the Union is here in Washington, D.C. tonight, the president's first State of the Union address. So campus reform goes out and starts getting reaction to the president's State of the Union address, which hasn't even happened yet. You can't even make this up as people give answers to something, an event that never happened. It'll happen in just a few hours from now. Listen.
I'm Kevin Phillips with Campus Reform. Today we're at NYU getting students' opinions on President Trump's State of the Union address. Except that speech won't happen for another 7 days. But what will they say when we ask them what they thought of it? Let's find out. Well, we've been getting people's reactions today to the State of the Union last night. Some people were saying that it was the most racist State of the Union that's ever happened. What was your reaction to everything that was said?
I didn't watch it because I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
Quite racist at the very least, if not up there with most racist.
Yeah. Wow. It's already quickly climbing the scale. Some of the people said today that they thought his immigration stance and that he outlined last night was especially hateful.
Very offensive.
What do you think of it?
It's something that I wouldn't have expected to happen in, like, our lifetime.
It's offensive. It is crazy, but I'm not shocked by it, by what he's done in the past, so.
Pretty ugly. I believe what I'm hearing about his rough nature and the hate that he probably said.
He told the Democrats the wall got 10 feet higher because they didn't stand up and give him applause at one point. What do you think of all that?
It's the behavior of someone who refuses to accept accountability for their failures.
The way he acts, you shouldn't be acting like that if you're the leader of the country, regardless of what party you're in. So that frustrates me a lot.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that was his State of the Union address.
Hopefully everything that he's outlined can be overturned by the public opinion.
Was there one thing in particular that you saw people most upset about?
Probably with immigration going on with the whole DACA thing and him trying to build the wall.
One of the craziest moments when he started a build the wall chant with all the Republicans that were there.
Okay.
People on social media were accusing him of basically using the State of the Union as a campaign event.
Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous.
I think it's absolutely crazy.
The fact that he started a chant, he's big on those.
What's your reaction?
I think it reveals that he has the temperament of a 3-year-old.
People, a lot of times, they're trying to say don't listen to what he's saying, and they just want to shut it down just because it's Trump saying it. Do you think they have any ground there?
I don't think so. I think there are enough progressive and intellectual people that really analyze what he's saying.
Do you think he's going to follow through with the things that he promised last night?
I don't know. We'll see. He said he was going to become president. He became president.
All right, then we got Nancy Pelosi. You know, I guess we really can't blame these people when you got Nancy Pelosi and people like Chris Matthews and idiots like John Heilemann over at MSNBC Conspiracy TV. Just listen to these idiots.
This is about fact. It's about evidence, about data. It's not about making up a false memo based on a false premise that the chairman hasn't even read, and then to put it out there.
I give you that he has. If he hasn't read it, that's a problem. We'll take that up.
But how can you decide if you haven't read it that it should be revealed to the American people?
Fair point. But what I'm saying is this: are you saying, without revealing anything that's confidential or classified, obviously,
I can't do that.
I get it, but you're saying that if the American people see this memo and they read it and they think about it, that they could not reasonably conclude that there was any problem with what happened during the election?
Of course not.
Well, then why are they so anxious to release it?
Because it's not even true. It's not even true. They have made up a memo that isn't even true, and they're lying to the American people.
So what are you going to do about it?
Well, we have put forth a memo, which we reluctantly did, but said don't put this out unless it is reviewed and redacted.
Now it won't be out when theirs is out.
Doesn't that tell you something? The Republicans say, we want the American people to see our memo, but we're voting against showing the American people the Democratic memo.
It looks to me like a purge. I mean, today McCabe gets pushed out as deputy director of the FBI, and now the president's on the warpath after the guilt that pulled up, thanks to Chairman Nunes of your committee, to dig up evidence enough to support getting rid of Rod Rosenstein, the deputy head of the Justice Department. Why is he purging everybody that's involved with investigating him in the Russian probe?
Well, I have to imagine, Chris, that he's scared of what they're going to find out. And, you know, there were, of course, stories about him, his firing of Comey and the reason he fired Comey. In fact, the president did an interview that suggested that he fired Comey because of the Russia investigation. And now the pressure that was applied to Andrew McCabe and the result today of him stepping down. I said earlier today that Andrew McCabe should not be replaced with somebody who's just a presidential stooge and who's going to help kill this investigation, because there are already plenty of people around here, quite honestly, who are just doing the bidding of the president over conducting a thorough and fair investigation.
It looks to me like
where we are now.
A congressman, I mean, you're young, too young to have seen it, but it looks like a slow-motion Saturday night massacre.
Senator, it's John Heilman here. I want to ask you a question that under almost any other circumstances would be ridiculous and absurd, but under these circumstances I think is actually warranted. Is it possible that the Republican chairman of the House Intel Committee has been compromised by the Russians? Is it possible that they actually have a Russian agent running the House Intel Committee on the Republican side?
I hope that's not the case. I certainly have no information to suggest that it is. I think that
doesn't his behavior speak of that, though? I mean, I'm not the first person who's raised this. He's behaving like someone who's been compromised, and there are people in the Intelligence Committee, in the intelligence community, and others with great expertise in this area who look at him and say, that guy's been compromised.
All right, let's get to our busy phones. Dan is in Michigan. We'll start with you. Dan, hi, how are you? Welcome to the program, sir.
Yeah, how you doing, Sean? Hey, Sean, the other day when you were putting all those clips of all these intelligence officials saying that there is no evidence that they have come across that Trump committed collusion, and you put like 5 or 6 of them together.
Well, you got Dianne Feinstein, you got Clapper, you got Comey, you've got Manchin, you've got Maxine Waters, and many others, and some have said it many times.
Right. So here's the point, Sean. It just stunned me for a minute. Throw the dossier out the window for a second. They all said there was no evidence. Well, police don't start an investigation of anybody unless there's evidence. So when they all said there's no evidence. And then let's shoot forward to Sessions. When they demanded Sessions do appoint an independent counsel, Sessions should have said, well, everyone says there's no evidence. What evidence do you have for me before I decide to step back? And they would not have been able to produce any evidence to Sessions. And so Sessions should have said, then there's not going to be a special counsel because there's no evidence of a crime.
The problem is Sessions, and this is where I understand the president's frustration. In my opinion, just because he was on the campaign, he need not have recused himself from all of this. If Jeff Sessions didn't recuse himself, none of this would have happened in the last year. Now, the fact is, if you have a year's worth of investigation, Brit Hume said something last night. I actually think we do need a special counsel to look into Comey and Strzok and McCabe and Lisa Page and Loretta Lynch and a whole bunch of them. I really do. And then look into, the dossier issue, and then look into the Clinton email server investigation and the Clinton Foundation and Uranium One. There's so much to look into. And I don't know if we have the resources or the objectivity in the deep state to actually get it done, especially in light of recent events and what we've learned here. But the reality is this. There's not one single slight bit of evidence that has come on as it relates to Trump-Russia collusion. And as Britt was warning, the problem with special counsels is they need to at some point justify their existence. And that means they expand out from what their original mandate is. Once Comey discovered there was no there, to quote Peter Strzok in his text message to Lisa Page, that should have been the end of it. But now it's, okay, let's go after Paul Manafort 10 years before he ever worked for Donald Trump and work he did in the Ukraine. And let's set poor General Flynn up for a perjury trap because they had illegally surveilled, unmasked, and leaked raw intelligence on him. So they knew what he had said. And if he misremembered or lied, we got him on line to the FBI. And by the way, if he doesn't agree to plead guilty, we'll just go after his son. I mean, it's horrible. The whole you can indict a ham sandwich thing is true. It really is. But there was no evidence. You're right. And there is no evidence. All right. My buddy Tavares is in Greenville. He is in North Carolina. Tavares, how's it going, my friend? How's the business going now that you're a graduate? You got your own business going. You're making some serious money. You're getting married. You got a baby. You got it all going on now.
Oh, no. I'm in my 4th year of marriage. Happily and blissful. Sean, the Heavenly Father, my Heavenly Father, our Heavenly Father, he blessed me. He told me to take a pay cut so I can be in my son's life a little more than I am now. I had to take a back seat to the money, Sean, and I work for the city now, and I'm hauling heavy waste disposal units.
Well, wait a minute, but if
so
you
I'm
didn't,
home
if
every
you
night, get to sleep next to my wife.
But if you didn't go to school, you wouldn't have been able to get that job, right?
You have to be CDL certified. You have to have your CDL license. And Sean, hey, the blessing that you gave to me, hey, it's still working in my life. And,
awesome. Well, I'm proud of you. By the way, I don't mind those decisions when people make a decision. I'll be honest. I'm going to be very blunt here. I think when my kids were younger, I worked way too much. Remember, I was on the air every afternoon, 3 to 6. I was on 9 to 10 every night. And I was with them a lot on weekends. You know, they were both athletes, so I did a lot of traveling with them then. But then there were many weekends I was on the road. I mean, and I've actually apologized to both my kids for not being as involved as I should have been, I think, at times. But I hadn't, you know, it's it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the others. I mean, everybody has to work. And then when I'm working and opportunities come, I got to fight hard and work hard. That nobody gets it easy in life, and sometimes you can make adjustments, and other times you can't.
I was working 13 to 14 hours a day, home for like 6, and my son is 7. He just turned 7. Your nephew just turned 7 December. I just turned 40, and I had to take the benefits, and the medical benefits are great working for the city. And just to look in his eyes, he look over when he's on a basketball court. He looks at me. I mean, it's I can't describe the feeling. It's indescribable when he can see me and his mother there. And you know, I just want to say, you know, people don't understand how I can listen to conservative talk radio, and they always ask me, how can you listen to that? I mean, number one, my attitude is different. I don't take anything personally. I don't take Donald Trump personally. I don't take conservatism personally. None of this stuff affects me personally. You know what I'm saying? So people out there.
Well, they can. Wait. Hang on one second. So over the years, you and I develop a bit of a friendship. Right. And Mr. Evil Conservative, you know, I threw out a challenge to you in your life to better your life. And you and I had a handshake agreement, man-to-man agreement, and you have only thrived and lived up to your end of the bargain. Now, what part of our friendship could they possibly not like?
Well, one part is your conservative friends might not like the fact that I eat your lunch. They don't like that. They don't like the fact how I eat your lunch and take your juice box and all that when we do talk. But on the other hand,
by the way, you can get help for this delusional affliction you're suffering from. But we'll put that aside.
It's a bit of insanity that rubs off from me, from you to his best friend. And one thing they do hate is the fact that you have a best friend who is a Democrat. You know which is me. I'm his best friend. Big Baby James, take your seat. That's me. I'm Hannity's best friend.
You're not my best friend, but I
am your best friend.
I kicked you in the ass a little bit, and I gave you a challenge, and you lived up.
Times.
And you lived up to the challenge, and you're a better person today because of it, because you know a conservative, and your friends don't like me because I'm conservative.
Hey, you know what?
Hey, by the way, I got to go. You want to know why? Because I just kicked your ass again. I got to go. All right, love you, Tavares. God bless you. All right, State of the Union tonight on the Fox News Channel. All begins at 9 Eastern. We'll be on right thereafter. Donald Trump Jr. will join us tonight. Sebastian Gorka, Dan Bongino, Kayleigh McEnany, Herman Cain, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Christian Nielsen, Joe Concha, and Newt Gingrich.